And that's, you know, significant in the life of a child. And we're trying to do the same thing at our trial court level so that the child isn't stuck in the system.
Now, obviously some of these children move from foster care to foster care. That happens too.
Yes, they do.
And so, you know, getting them in a very stable situation is real critical, I would assume.
It is critical, and that's one of the things we're working together with the Department of Human Services on, is to reduce the number of placements in foster care so that the child isn't in this constantly revolving door. I mean, I call that homeless.
Sure.
I call it homeless if you're taken out of your birth home and you just get moved from place to place to place. That's got to stop.
Why does that occur now? Is that something that's just always occurred, that, you know, foster care parents get to a certain point and they want to move the child on? Or
I think there's a few issues there. One, I worry about the training that we're giving foster parents, and sometimes if the child's difficult, they want to give the child back.
Okay.
It might not be a suitable setting. The foster parent may not be ready to deal with a child who's acting out and say, this one's too hard for me. There can be a lot of issues, and I think from the get-go, we have to do a really good job by the caseworker of trying to match the child with the foster family to figure out, you know, is this a placement that's going to work, so we can reduce the number of placements. But, you know, there's issues on both sides.
Let's talk a little bit about Michigan's adoption services programs. What really is the mission of these programs for adoption?
Well, I think, you know, we touched on it somewhat, is to actually support the adoptive parents and the child so that the adoption succeeds. I think right now about 8% of our adoptions in Michigan fail.
Okay.
Where
so this is after the child is adopted?
After the child's adopted. Along the way to adopting, making sure that the adoption succeeds, and then after the adoption, supporting the adoption so that it succeeds. So again, a number of these children have medical issues, so we try to, you know, get the right subsidies for them, get the medical subsidies, make sure that the parents have all the records that they need to help in treating that child if they've had medical problems. And a lot of them have. When they're abused and neglected, they'll come into care with terrible problems. You know, suppose they were born cocaine addicted, for example. You know, and some of them turn into just beautiful, healthy children, but they need help to get there. And so I think that's part of what the Department of Human Services is trying to do in their adoption support program.
Now, are most of those dollars federal dollars that come from the feds?
You know, I can't tell you the total mix, but we are very dependent on federal resources to help us on this, especially in foster care. I think we get someplace in the neighborhood of $250 million a year from the feds just to support our foster care, our kids in care. So we do get a lot of money from the federal government, and that means that because they give us a lot of money, they also audit us, so we have to jump to their commands.
Checks and balances.
Yes.
Now, how does an adopted parent become eligible? Are you just simply eligible if you adopt a child with special needs, or how are you eligible for these kinds of programs?
What I understand is they're going to be looking at income. They're also going to be looking at age of the child and the child's needs. And I understand that if it's a baby under 3 and they're healthy, that you're not likely going to get a subsidy.
I see.
But it will change depending on the medical needs of that child, the income of the family, and I frankly think that the formulas are so complicated I wouldn't even try to explain.
Yeah.
But
so it's, you know, it varies.
Right, it can vary.
Definitely varies.
It can vary.
And we talked about some of the challenges. And certainly, you know, when you're a parent thinking about adopting, there's obviously several hurdles you even have to get over, you know, to decide whether you want to do that or not.
Right.
What would you tell the viewers out there? I mean, you've obviously done this for, what, a decade now?
I've done it for 5 years only. I didn't
5 years.
grow up in this. area. I didn't know about it until I became Chief Justice. I really had no real exposure.
Are there others like yourself out there trying to highlight this issue?
There are.
Okay.
And you know what I decided with the rest of my life? I've been so fortunate to serve on the Michigan Supreme Court. And I
For
thought,
8 years, in fact, right?
8 years on the court now. That if I was going to serve a second term, that I would try to spend my time working through the people that are most hidden in the system, and those are the children. The ones who, I call them, they're at the bottom of the judicial branch food chain. And if I could spend my time making their issues more prominent, that that would be a good use of my time. And
certainly.
Yeah.
That's a legacy.
It's a good legacy,
Yeah.
and there are many dedicated judges and staff, private and public in our state, who are dedicated to children's issues, and around the country for that matter. And one of the great experiences of my life was serving nationally on the Pew Commission. And we investigated foster care in the United States and wrote a report for Congress. And I participated in that with 16 people over a couple-year period. And now about half of our recommendations have been enacted into federal law, and that has been a huge and exciting opportunity in my life. So I'm very fortunate to have had a hand in seeing change, not just in Michigan, but nationally.
Do you have any special stories in the last 5 years? Have you met any of these children or families?
I've mentored children myself. I became so intrigued with aging out foster youth that I have, and look, it's not, it's not for sissies. I mean, you must understand that, especially with older children, that you're taking on very challenged kids. But I was the mother of teenagers, and I figure that watching them and supporting them and letting them know that I'm still going to be around, that I'm not quitting, has been very satisfying. So I'm happy to be doing that. And in fact, I just had a call today from one of the girls that I mentored, who's now 21 and working for DTE and trying to get her college degree and going through all the usual things that 21-year-olds go through. So I'm not her mother, I'm a mentor, but it means a lot. And I mean, one story I can tell you about is one young woman I mentored who really didn't have a really good background in math. She had gone to the Detroit public schools and graduated, wanted to get a car, and so I went with her to look for a used car, and I was so glad I was there because the used car dealer was going to charge her 40% interest on the contract. Ouch. And she was going to pay it. And when he saw me walk in with her, that was the end of that contract, and it didn't happen. But she had no idea, 18, being aged out, of what real life is like, what a consumer loan contract is. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing a mentor can do, is help you with adult life when there's nobody there to help you.
And certainly being aged out, it's the state is done.
The state's done with you, so you're on your own figuring all this out. So.
Well, thank you very much. This has been wonderful to learn a little bit more about Adoption Day here in Michigan. Is there a website that viewers can go? Or
there's a website, www. I think it's nationaladoptionday.org. That you can get information on Adoption Day, and you can always call the Michigan Supreme Court Office of Public Information. 313-972-3219, and we'll help you if you're interested.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the program this month, and we'll catch you next month.